All right, rational expressions. This is chapter 9, part 1, and part 2 will be based on graphing. So here we're simplifying each expression and we're stating the excluded values. Now, an excluded value would be something like when a denominator is 0 or something underneath a root is negative. So we're going to have to look for that. Simplifying, whenever we have ugly fractions like this, we know we're going to have to cancel things out on top and bottom. So what we're going to do is we're going to factor as much as we can, top and bottom. We're going to find what would give us 0 on the bottom, and then we're going to cancel everything out and simplify it. So starting off here, number 1, you could look at this and you could say, well, the bottom could be 0 at some point, but we don't really know when that is. So we're going to have to factor a little bit. So factoring the top and the bottom, the top, what could I take out of the 14 and the 18? I could take a 2 out. So this would be like 2 outside it. And then what else could I take out? I could take out a p. So 2p. 14 divided by 2 is 7. P squared without a p is p. And then plus 9. Right? So I factored the top there. And now we do the same thing with the bottom. 4 and 18, we could actually take out just a 2. And then p squared and p, we could take out a p. So this will leave us with 2p plus 9. Now that we're factored, right? Now that we're factored, we can say, well, this could go 0, right? Because that p could be 0. Or this could go 0. And we need to find what both of those would be. So we could say, well, 2p is 0. Well, that's when p is 0, right? That's really easy. The other one would be 2p plus 9 is 0. So p would be negative 9 halves. So the excluded values, where do I want to write that? Excluded will be negative 9 halves and 0. All right. If you look at the answer key, it will have little squiggly lines next to it to signify that they're in a set together. I don't care if you use the squiggly lines or not. What you need those two numbers. So now that we have that, we can look back at our factored equation here, and we can cancel things out from the top and bottom. We have a 2p on top and a 2p on bottom, so they can both cancel. And then that leaves us with 7p plus 9 over 2p plus 9. And there's nothing else that we can do to simplify that, so that's it. That's our answer. All right. Now, something to notice here. Had we done all the canceling, and then we looked at our answer here, this thing here, and we looked at that to find what our excluded values would be, we would not have came up with 0, right? You have to look at the factored one before canceling. You have to look at what it is before you cancel for the excluded values, all right? Let's do another one, number 2 here. This one's a little bit harder to factor. Remember, we have to find things that multiply to be here and add up to be that. Factors of 15, we could say, well, 5 and 3, and 5 and 3 gives us 8. So yeah, this will be n plus 3, n plus 5. All right, now for the bottom, factors of 27. 9 and 3, I think, are some. 9 and 3. We want to get a negative 6, so how about a negative 9 and a positive 3? That'll give us a negative 6. So we could say, well, this is going to be n minus 9, n plus 3. Right? Now from here we can find our excluded values. So I will say n minus 9 is 0, and n plus 3 is 0. So I get n is 9 and n is negative 3. right? These are our excluded. And I'll just put a little box around that. Now we can go back to our original. We can cancel some things out. We have an n plus 3 on top and bottom. And we end up having a final answer of n plus 5 over n minus 9. And that's it. That's our answer. All right, let's look at number 3. What can we cancel out? The top, we can pull an x out, right? We can pull a 5x out of the top, actually. This will be x plus 3 left over. And the bottom, we could pull a 3 out. 3, and then x plus 3. So from there, we could pretty quickly say, well, the excluded value is going to be negative 3, right? We can kind of solve that in our head. So excluded, we'll say negative 3 like that. And then we can cancel things from top and bottom. The x plus 3's will cancel. And we are left with 5x over 3. And that's our answer. Number 4. Well, I'm going to rewrite the numerator a little bit. Whenever I factor things, I almost always like for the squared term to be positive. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out a negative. So negative 1 times negative 30 plus n squared. Right? You see what I did? I changed the signs of all of them, but I pulled out a negative, so I really didn't change the signs. Maybe we can go ahead and factor the bottom of it. 35 would split up into 6 and 7, right? Is that 6 and 7? No. About 5 and 7. And 5 plus 7 gives me 12, so negative 5 and negative 7. So this will be n minus 5, n minus 7. Since we factored the denominator completely, we could go ahead and say what our excluded values are. Excluded, we'll say, well, n can't be, what can't it be? It can't be 5, and it can't be 7. All right. Now I need to finish factoring the top here. I'm going to rewrite this where our n squared term is first, so we'll have negative 1, and then we'll have n squared plus n minus 30 over n minus 5, n minus 7. All right, factors of negative 30 that add up to be 1. We could say, well, 5 and 6, right? 5 and 6. So if we had a negative 5 and a positive 6, that would give us a positive 1. Yep. So this will be negative 1, x minus, not x, n minus 5, n plus 6 over n minus 5, n minus 7. Now we can cancel things out finally. The n minus 5's will cancel, and I'll be left with negative 1 times n plus 6 over n minus 7. Now at this point, I'm going to put that negative back in. You don't have to do that. It doesn't really matter. I don't care how you leave that. But I'm going to change it into negative n minus 6 over n minus 7. And that's going to be my answer. You could, if you wanted to, you could put that negative 1 with the denominator and distribute it into the denominator. It would still be correct. It's just a different option. So that is number 4 there. All right, moving on. Now these on this page are written a little bit differently, right? There are 2 fractions that are multiplied or divided together, right? Starting off, let's multiply these. Now, while this might be kind of intimidating, remember that fractions you just multiply straight across the top and the bottom, right? So we're going to have, well, here, I'll rewrite the whole thing. We'll have m squared plus 11m plus 28, and then m plus 6, right? And for the denominator, I'll have m squared minus 3m minus 28, m squared plus m minus 30, right? So now it's like one of the problems on the front page, except it's a little bit longer, right? We have 3 different pieces that we need to factor now, and remember we are still going to need to look at where our denominator goes to 0. So right now I'm going to find what my factors would be of these. For 28, I want to get up to 11. What could we do? Well, 20. I'm just going to list them because I'm not seeing something right away. 14 and 2, 7 and 4, 7 and 4. That would be it. So it'd be 7 and 4. Positive 7, positive 4. All right. Let's look at the denominator. That way I can write it all together. 28. What would that give me? 14 and 2 would go into that. 7 and 4. It's going to be the 7 and 4. It'll be a negative 7 and a positive 4, right? Lastly, we have our negative 30. That one's a little bit easier. That will be a positive 6 and a negative 5. Alrighty, let's write all these out. So we will have this first piece. This will split up into m plus 7, m plus 4, and then we have a m plus 6 at the end. The denominator, I'll look at this one now. That guy will split into m minus 7, m plus 4. And then this last piece will turn into m plus 6, m minus 5. All right. Now, before we cancel things, we need to stop and we need to list our excluded values. And there's a little bit of a better, or I don't know about better, but there's a faster way to write it sometimes. I'm just going to say, well, m cannot equal, and what are they going to be? 7, 7, negative 4, negative 6, and 5. Right? Some people like to write these in smallest to biggest. I'm not going to be a stickler about that. I don't really care. But there we are. And a good way to check yourself really quickly is we have 4 sets of parentheses on bottom, so we will have 4 different pieces there. All right, that's a good way to check yourself. So now we can cancel some things. We'll have the plus 4 and the plus 4 that cancels, the 6 and the 6 that cancels, and now we can rewrite it. This will be m plus 7 on top, and we don't need the parentheses because it's all on its own. And then we'll have m minus 7, m minus 5. And there we are. If you really wanted to, you could redistribute that bottom piece and turn it back into a trinomial, but that's just a lot of extra work, and I'm not going to do that. So here are our answers there. Number 6. This is a little bit different because we have division. Maybe you remember, maybe you don't, but anytime you have, we'll say 5 over 6 divided by, I don't know, what should we say? 1 over 2. Whenever you divide fractions like this, you flip the second one and you change it to multiplying. So this is the same thing as 5 over 6 times 2 over 1. Okay? So all that we're going to do here is we're going to flip that second fraction, and then it's just like the previous problem. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and just rewrite that now. So this will be 45 plus 4m minus m squared over m squared plus 5m minus 14 times, right? 14 minus 5m minus m squared over m squared minus 17m plus 72. Alrighty. Now, we've got these top pieces where we have a negative m squared on both of those. I don't know how to factor that, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to change them to positives by taking out a negative of it. So this first piece will be like negative 1 times, what will that be? M squared minus 4m minus 45, right? I kind of rewrote that a little bit so that it would be easier to factor. And then same thing here, I'm going to take out another negative 1, and then I'll have m squared plus 5m minus 14. All right, now for our denominator, I'll have m squared plus 5m minus 14. And I don't really need a multiplication symbol there. M squared minus 17m. Well, maybe I can write that nicer. Good grief, it's supposed to be 72. All right. Now, notice that on top and bottom, we have something that repeats. We have this and this. If we did not have to list the excluded values, we could go ahead and cancel them now. But we need to list the excluded values, the things that they can't be. So I'm going to have to factor them, and then I can cancel them. Okay? I know that they're both going to cancel completely, but I first need to factor the bottom so that I can figure out what excluded values I have. Something else to see here is that we have a negative 1 and a negative 1. Negative 1 times negative 1 is 1, so we can just cancel those out. So maybe I can undo some of these and get rid of these. Yeah. All right, so the negative 1s will go away. Now I need to figure out what I'm going to factor each of these into. My negative 45, what would that be? That would be like a 9 and 5, right? 9 times 5 is 45. How about a negative 9 and a positive 5? Yeah. The second piece, negative 14 splits up into 7 and 2. I want to make it a 5, positive 5, so it'll be a positive 7 and a negative 2. And the same thing will happen on bottom, right, because they're the exact same thing. Now for negative 17 and 72, oh my, I'm going to get the calculator. I think that's a multiple of 12. It is. 12 and 6 goes together. That doesn't make 17 though. How about 72 is a multiple of 9 also. 9 and 8. And if you add 9 plus 8, you get 17. So negative 9 and negative 8 gives me negative 17. So there we are. All right. Now we can factor all these. So this will be m minus 9, m plus 5. That's our first piece, the blue piece. Next up we'll have m plus 7, m minus 2, m plus 7, m minus 2, m minus 9, m minus 8. All right, now for our excluded values, I can say, well, m cannot equal, what will this be? Negative 7, 2, 9, and 8. Now for canceling, I can say, well, negative 9, positive 7, negative 2, and negative 2. So this all simplifies down to be m plus 5 over m minus 8. And there we are. Moving on, number 7 here. Same thing's going to happen with our division sign. We're going to flip that second fraction. And so before I do that, well, you know what? We'll just do that now. We'll say a minus 4, a squared minus 3a minus 4. And I'm just going to multiply them together also. The bottom becomes the top, so this will be a squared plus 5a plus 4. And the bottom piece is 4a plus 16. All right. Factoring things. I have two trinomials here. -4 splits up into, how do I get a -3 out of that? How about -4 and +1? Yeah. The other one will be a +4 and a +1. And notice that the 4a plus 16, this bottom piece, that we can factor a 4 out of. So this will be a minus 4, that's the upper left piece, and then we'll have a plus 4, a plus 1. For the bottom, we'll have a minus 4, a plus 1. And then for that last piece, we factor a 4 out, and then we're left with a plus 4. Excluded values. We can say, well, a cannot equal, what can it not equal? 4, -1, and -4. Oops. Guess I'll stop soon. Now canceling. -4, -4, +4, +4, +1, +1. Ooh, that's nice. And we're left with 1/4. Kind of neat. All right, number 8, and then I'm going to end the video for now. This one we just, really we can just kind of extend that fraction, and I can write it like this. That kind of saves me from copying this step one time. That first piece, the 4a minus 40, well, I can pull a 4 out of that, and I'll have a minus 10. The second piece I can pull a 10 out of, so this will be 10, and then a plus 4. I know that I'm going to have an a plus 4 for the bottom right spot. Now for that other one, the trinomial. -80, multiplying to -80 and adding to -2. How about 8 and 10? That could give me a 2, a +8 and a -10. Yep. So this would be a plus 8, a minus 10. So excluded values, a cannot equal, what can it not equal? -8, 10, and -4. Now for canceling, I'll have my -10, my -10, my +4 and +4. And now we just combine like terms. Well, not really combine like terms. We'll combine the 4 and the 10. We'll multiply those really, and we'll get a 4d over a plus 8. And there we are. All right, there's our first page of it, and I'll come back with another video to do number 9.